Okay, we're taking a look at a game from PrepTest 50, game number 2. And this is a selection game, a very common type of game, selections. And somewhere below, I'll give you a list of other games that are really, really similar to this. Because this game has appeared on the LSAT, I'm going to guess like a dozen times. We're always choosing a smaller number of a larger number. In this case, it's 5 of 10. Sometimes it's 6 of 9, 6 of 10, 5 of 9. In this case, 5 of 10. For whatever reason, they break it down into 3 categories. In this case, it's parents, students, and teachers, but there's been many variations upon it. And for whatever reason, the first category is always FGH. Always. They're very, very consistent in that regard. That is what our sketch is going to look like. You always write the names of the 3 categories across the top, and then write in all the names of the people, and then we're going to choose them, either by circling them or crossing them out. We get into the rules. The rules on these types of games tend to either mention numbers or use formal logic. Now, if your formal logic is a little bit shaky, there is not time in this game to teach you formal logic. Formal logic is something that takes hours and hours and hours to learn, and quite frankly, it probably takes months to learn properly. You definitely want to get a book. You want to take a prep course. If you're still in school, you want to take a formal logic class, but you're going to have to trust me on some of these. So, first rule says there's exactly 1 student. All right. Says we can't have both F and H, good enough. We can't have both M and Z. We cannot have both U and W. And then we have these statements, F cannot be selected unless Z is selected. When you translate that into formal logic, it says if I have an F, then I have a Z. And there's also something in formal logic called the contrapositive. It contraposes as if there's no Z, then there's no F. The contrapositive is the logical inverse of a formal logic statement. W cannot be selected unless H is selected. If there's a W, then there's an H. If there's no H, then there's no W. All right. So we have our rules down here, and ideally on test day, write all the rules down, get them all down in a nice column like that. And then we jump into the game. The first question on almost every logic game, 99% of them, you solve by using the rules. And we just go through the rules, 1 rule at a time. So for instance, it says there has to be exactly 1 student. Well, the students' names are K, L, and M. We can't have answer choices that have more than 1 student. So answer choice A has both a K and an L. A, you're gone. We never need to think about you again. Answer choice B checks out. Answer choice C checks out. Answer choice D checks out. Answer choice E checks out. Eliminated 1. On we go. No FH. Do any of these answer choices have both an F and an H? No. Looks good. We move on to the next one. No MZ. Do any of these have both an M and a Z? And looks like we're pretty clear on that account too. No U and W. Well, answer choice D has both a U and a W. It's gone. If I have an F, I have to have a Z. We take a look. Answer choice B has an F, but it doesn't have a Z. It's gone. And if I have a W, I have to have an H. Well, we're down to C and E. C does, in fact, have a W, but it doesn't have an H. C is gone. And rule by rule by rule, the answer has to be E. All right, on we go. So 7 is our first if, and most of these questions here are ifs. We want to do the if questions first. If questions require new sketches, we're going to make the new sketches first. Here it says if W and Z are selected, which of the following is a pair of people who could also be selected. So here's what happens. We're going to circle both W and Z. And then we go to our rules. Well, what happens if I have a W? We go down here. If I have a W, I have an H. If I have a W, I don't have a U. We had 2 rules about W. What happens if I have a Z? If I have a Z, I do not have an M. Now, don't be tempted by this one. This one says if I have an F, I have a Z, but that doesn't mean if you have a Z, you have an F. Formal logic doesn't work backwards, so we've already run out of rules in that regard. Does anything happen if I have an H? Well, if I have an H, there's not going to be an F, so F can go. Does anything happen if I don't have an M? No. Does anything happen if I don't have an F? No. You're at a logical dead end at that point, but you should expect that because this is just a could-be question. So we take a look through the answers here. Could I have both a U and an X? No, U's already gone. Could I have both K and an L? Yeah, K and L are still open, but we have to remember there's only one student, so you can't have both of them. Even though they look like they could be there, remember these rules are still governing the sketch. Could I have both a G and an M? No, M is gone. Could I have both a G and a K? G is not circled, K is not circled. It definitely looks like I could have that. May as well check E just to be on the safe side. Could I have an F and a G? No, F is gone. So it turns out the answer to number 7 is absolutely D. That could happen, just doesn't need to happen. We go on to question 9 next. We skip 8. We'll come back to 8 at the end just because question number 8 is going to be based upon deductions or old sketches. May as well come back to it at the end when we have some old sketches. We drop a line down. We rewrite everybody out. K, L, M, U, W, X, and Z. And here it says that W is selected. Then any one of the following could also be selected except. All right, what happens if I have a W? There's no U. What happens if I have a W? There's an H. What happens if I have an H? There's no F. And guess what? Answer choice A says F. We can't have an F. It's gone. Done. You're just following the rules. It's like following the bouncing balls in this game. So you're taking instructions and just adding those details in there. All right. We drop it down. We write everybody back in again. Don't solve things in your head. Your head is where bad things happen. You'll notice how fast this is going. On test day, it would go even faster. This is going even slower because I'm stopping to explain some of it. So, question number 10 says, if the committee is to include exactly one parent, then which of the following is a person who must be selected? So let's pause for a second in question number 10 here. Oops, and this was question number 9. Sorry, I marked it 8. Question number 10, think about the numbers they're giving us in terms of the parents, the students, and the teachers. They're telling us there's going to be one parent. They're telling us there's going to be one student, and that means there's going to be 3 teachers. Let's think about the implications of that. If there are going to be 3 teachers, then I'm choosing 3 of U, W, X, and Z. Do we have any rules that are just about the teachers? And we do. We have this rule that says we can't have both U and W together. Which means if we're going to be able to get to 3 teachers, then we're going to have X and Z and one of U or W. But X and Z are going to have to be there, and guess what? Answer choice E says X, and we're done. It was based upon the numbers. You didn't really actually need to do anything here in this sketch. All right, on we go. Question number 11 says, if M is selected. So M is a student. I circle M, but that also means I get rid of K and L. There's only one student. What happens if I have an M? If I have an M, there's no Z. Any other rules about having an M? No. Any other rules about not having a K? No. Any rules about not having an L? No. Any rules about not having a Z? Not having a Z means not having an F. Let's get rid of the F. Any rules about not having an F? No. Just because we don't have an F, it doesn't mean we do have an H. Just F and H can't be together. So we're kind of at a logical dead end here. But take a look at these teachers. Once again, we've got U and W, just like from the previous question. I definitely can't have both of these, which means I can't have all 3 teachers, which means I can only have maximum 2 teachers here with 1 student. But if I'm going to be able to hit 5, and we mentioned in the beginning, these games tend to talk about numbers, I'm going to have to include G and H. And answer choice B mentions having G and H. And we are done on that one. And then we have to come back to question number 8. And here we're looking for a pair of people who cannot both be selected. Now, for questions like this, how they tend to work is you'll have 2 things listed in the answer choices. This is a very common question on this type of game. You'll have 2 things listed, but each of them will have contrary outcomes. And what I mean by contrary outcomes, I'd mean something like, could I have an F and a W? Okay, hypothetically. Well, if I had an F, I can't have an H. But if I have a W, I do have an H. That's what I mean by contrary outcomes. You could not have both F and H together. They lead to the exact opposite thing. Now, F and W aren't answers here, but that would be a really good answer. Do we have anything else here that has contrary outcomes? Well, F leads to a Z, and if you had an M, it would lead to not having a Z. F and M being together would also be bad. Oh, and answer choice B says that. I didn't even notice that. But that's exactly how they always work. 2 things, but they will each lead to the exact opposite outcome. And employ that when you come across other games of selection like this. Like I say, I'm going to leave a list below of some of the other places where you can find these games. This is a very, very, very common game type. Definitely something you want to master prior to your test day. All right, hope that helped. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments or drop me an email.